Hello and welcome to Unstoppable. I'm your host, Kerwin, and today, wow, this is a biggie. We talk with Anthony Noud. He has got an incredibly big story. By age 15, Anthony was actually addicted to heroin, and by 24, he was using $1,000 worth of heroin and ice a day. And this is a jaw-dropping story of how one young man beat his addiction, turned his life around, and ended up starting a company that he grew to become incredibly successful to help out people just like him going through what he was. If you've ever struggled to understand addiction and wanting to learn new ways to approach it, if you want to hear a real comeback story, this is the one for you. Listen up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome on to Unstoppable. We have Anthony Noud. Do I get that right, Noud?
Noud.
Noud.
Like loud with an N.
Well, I don't care that it's Noud. From now I'm calling you Noud.
I get it all the time.
I'm sure the chicks probably like that. Now, mate, your story is actually quite incredible. You were a heroin addict at the age of 15.
Correct.
After multiple overdoses and near-death experience, you were 24 years old and morbidly obese, and you were on the highest legal dose of methadone available. Mm-hmm. At the same time, using $1,000 of heroin and ice per day, and that was when you decided to get clean.
Correct.
You decided to get clean while you're peaking at the all-time high, but you then went on. You got a job as a cleaner in a family gym, and you lost over 35 kilos of fat in the first year. You went on to win the heavyweight Mr. Queensland Natural Bodybuilding in 2015, and you're now the owner and founder of Awaken Lifestyles, where you guys have a team of qualified professionals delivering all sorts of tailored wellness programs to corporates and individuals all over the country, mate. And you just celebrated 10 years 100% clean and sober in January 2019.
Yes.
Awesome feat, mate. What an incredible journey.
Yeah, thank you.
So I guess the story always begs to ask, where did your story begin? Because most people would assume it began when you were 15 and you became addicted to heroin. I'm curious what happened before that. Like what actually led you to that place where you were 15 years old and using hard drugs?
Yeah, man. So basically started from a really young age. I grew up in what I perceived to be a really healthy family environment. Like there was no, hectic stuff going on at home, middle class family. But I remember growing up having this moment. I would have been maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I remember speaking to an older cousin at the time, and she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I go, "I want to be an ambulance driver," like typical masculine. She's like, "Why would you want to be an ambulance driver?" And I'm like, if I get to drive really fast, I get to see lots of gory stuff, and I get to, help people out. She goes, "Oh, you don't want to be an ambulance driver. Ambulance drivers aren't successful. You should be a doctor. Don't be an ambulance driver because they're not successful." And at that time, I just remember like something happening inside of me going, "What do you mean successful? What makes me need to be successful?"
Yeah, right.
And had this.
How old were you when that happened?
I'd be guessing, but I'd say somewhere around 8 or 9.
Okay.
And then I remember from that point and just starting to get messages and pick up stuff kind of saying, I had this belief that as I wasn't good enough. I was somehow flawed and defective as a human being.
Yeah, right.
And that I needed to be more, do more, have more, achieve more in order to one day finally reach this enough, right? And then at about, I was always mischievous, I guess.
Yeah.
Started to get into trouble at school and stuff like that. I remember being punished at school or, suspended, sent home, all that kind of thing. And one day making the decision, well, it was basically, if you guys aren't going to love me as I am, then fuck you. I'll show you how bad I can be. And from there, just started kind of playing up, hanging around older people in my neighborhood.
What age group was this roughly?
So this is probably about 12, 13.
Okay.
I was
this playing up at school or just playing up in general?
Playing up in general.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Actively looking to do naughty stuff.
What were you rebelling against? Because you say your life was, you had the happy home life, everything was great. There was a little bit of friction at school.
I perceived everything to be great at home.
Right.
I was always looked after. I was always cared for.
Okay. But that wasn't necessarily the case.
Well, it was. It was unusual.
And this is what I want to clarify, because sometimes when we talk about our youth, sometimes we get a little bit sensitive because we don't want to make out our parents did a bad job.
Sure.
And here's one of the things that I've learned. My parents did the very, very, very best job that they possibly could.
Absolutely.
My mum was an amazing mum. She was a loving mum. My dad was, as present as he could be for what he was doing at the time, but I still ended up as a drug addict.
Correct.
And
Same. So my old man was a recovering alcoholic.
Okay.
He had many years sober.
Yep.
I never saw him drink.
Yeah, right.
Mum, at the time I didn't know it, but there wasn't a whole lot of affection or physical affection or words of affirmation or anything like that.
Right.
It turned out, I found out in my 30s that I actually had a adopted brother who was adopted out at a very young age when Mum was quite young.
Wow.
And so when I learnt that, it kind of made sense.
Yeah, okay.
Like I just went, it makes sense now. Now I understand why, things were like I didn't feel like I always got the affection or love that I guess I needed.
Yeah, right.
Having said that, I know Mum loved me dearly, absolutely did her best, still does her best.
They do the best that they can.
Absolutely. And, I wouldn't want any other mother. She's, the best in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess a bit of that, a bit of pressure from older family members being compared to other people in the family, kind of saying, why don't you study harder like her? Why don't you do more stuff like so-and-so? Cousins and stuff are quite successful. A lot of medical in my family on one side. The other side were all alcoholics.
Right.
So
you had quite the contrasting family. One side of the family were alcoholic addicts, and on the other side of the family, they were all degreed academics.
Correct.
And you're sitting in the middle going, I don't know which way to go.
Exactly.
And so what was the moment where you chose to go a different direction? Do you remember that day?
I don't remember the exact day, but I remember one time my school principal rousing at me, yelling at me and saying, Anthony Noud, you're a liar. You cannot be trusted. You're not going to be going anywhere, in life kind of thing. You're one of the people giving this school a bad name. And yeah, again, making that decision, then kind of going okay, well, fuck you guys. I'm not playing your game anymore.
Did you dabble in any drugs or alcohol before you hit heroin?
Yeah, definitely.
And what were you doing?
Smoking pot, using speed.
What age was this?
Started smoking pot daily from about 13.
Okay. Just easy access from where you lived?
Easy access. It felt awesome. I just remember being...
Do you remember the first time you got stoned?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I remember the first time I got stoned. I remember clearly sitting in school, it was grade 8 German. I was 13 years old. And I remember turning to the girl next to me in my class and saying to her, you really got to try this. This is amazing. I found the answer kind of thing. Why the hell? Why? To me, it just seemed why isn't everybody doing this? It feels so good and I feel confident. I can be myself. Why on earth aren't you all doing it? I remember she had this ghastly look on her face. She was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I remember thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah, right.
And then I just, made a decision to use as much as I could, as often as I could, and went from there.
Are you aware of what was going on in your brain at that time? On reflection now, were you aware of what was actually happening?
There's a lot of denial, there's a lot of denial.
But from a chemistry perspective, because I have this conversation a lot with addicts when they used a drug for the first time, and it's very similar stories to this. Oh my God, it was amazing. For the first time in my life, I was thinking, why isn't everybody doing this?
Absolutely.
I have not heard that. I've heard that more than once.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, and if you, and I know you've got a strong interest in addiction. There's a great book by a guy called Gabor Mate called "The Realms of the Hungry Ghost."
Okay.
And he talks about maladaptive brain development in the addict and how addiction is pretty much a spectrum condition.
Right.
Whereby depending on how your brain develops, at a low level of maladaptive development, you might have some small obsessive compulsive behaviors, small compulsive behaviors around wanting to use your phone, social media, maybe shopping, maybe sex, and then if you've had severe levels of maladaptive development, you've got severe levels of drug abuse, self-harm, prostitution, etc., etc. And how our brain developed determines on where we fall on that spectrum.
Sure.
But it's interesting. One of the things that he talks about that actually affects maladaptive brain development is this little concept called attunement, which is the presence of a maternal figure in our life, not the presence of them physically, the presence of them connectedly. And as a result, when the brain maladapts, we have different biochemical profiles, neurochemical profiles, and we don't produce normal levels of dopamine.
Right.
First time we take alcohol, first time we take drugs, there's this flood of serotonin, flood of dopamine, and it's the first time in many addicts' lives where they go, oh my God,
this is the answer.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's hits the nail on the head.
And so that was at about the age of 13, and then you started experimenting with speed as well?
Yep.
And how at the same age, around 13, 14?
Probably about 14, and then 15 is where I started to introduce more hard drugs and, a little bit more regularly.
And how did you make the jump from like, because cannabis and speed, or I suppose, cannabis is a, it's opiate-like in many respects.
Sure.
Speed is very much on the stimulants, spectrum. How did you make that jump from cannabis to speed to then go, I'm going to hit the H-bomb. I'm going to actually go all the way here. I'm not going to do this fucking low-level street crap. I'm going to...
People in the... I guess the peers that I was hanging around with and friends that I was hanging around with, and then the kids in the neighborhood and the older guys that I looked up to were doing that kind of thing. They were selling a lot of heroin.
Where is this? Where did you grow up?
West End in Brisbane.
No kidding. That's right. I remember our conversation now. Yeah, because I lived in Brisbane for a time.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what year was this? If you don't mind me asking.
This would be late 90s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And so then at the age of 15, did you know immediately that you were addicted to heroin, or did it take a little bit of time to get its claws in?
I was in complete denial, right? So the people that I hung around, like I said, they were selling it, and so they'd sit there and make up all their deals and be talking about these junkies and how, they use more than 3 or 4 days in a row and then they get physically addicted. Of course, these dealers were addicted themselves but were in complete denial.
Right.
But their life looked cool from the outside to a 15-year-old kid. And I remember just in my head being like, well, if you don't use it 3 days in a row, you're not going to get hooked. Like, you won't get sick. So just go 1, maybe 2 days and it'll be all good.
Right.
And kind of, I knew it was bad because I'd seen it. I'd see junkies coming and going and, the prostitutes you mentioned and all that kind of stuff.
Because West End, like around that time, there was normally an ambulance screaming down West End every night.
Yeah, it's a really nice suburb now, but when I was growing up...
But back then in the late 90s, early noughties, it was central.
Correct, yeah.
And so what happened from there? How did you obviously progress from just using 1 or 2 times a week, make sure no more than 3 days a row before?
Oh, yes and no, yeah. So while I was still at school and I had that kind of structure...
Yeah.
That helped, I guess. Like
okay.
I remember early days being different to my mates in a sense, or some of my mates, like my close mates. Like I remember after school we'd go back to the phone box when we used to have phone boxes and wait for the dealer at the phone box, right? And we'd be sitting there waiting, and he'd be 45 minutes because the dealer's never on time, obviously.
Yep. Always late.
Always just 5 minutes, mate.
Sometimes days.
Just 5 minutes, mate.
Just 5 minutes. That brings back memories.
And we'd be waiting there for 45 minutes. They'll be like, all right, I'm going home. And I'll be like, what do you mean you're going home? I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm not leaving this footpath until he's here.
Yeah, right. So you were a really dedicated, committed addict.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. I mean, and it's funny now because I still remember that it being a distinction going around, because I was 19 when I became addicted to amphetamines.
Right.
And I remember going around, this happened dozens of times. I'd go around to my mate's place and I'm like, right, who's got some gear?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, mate, everyone's dry. And I'm like, everyone? You've rung everyone. You've rung and you've been to oh yeah, mate. No, you ain't tried everyone. And I'd bang the phones and I'd get in the car and I'd go and give it 3 or 4 hours. I'd be rolling back in and I'd always find, and the boys would be like, how did you do that? And I was just like, boys, when you want something bad enough, you don't quit.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that resourcefulness. Did you have you been able to utilize that? Because a lot of people when they get into business, it's like, oh, I haven't made any sales. Oh, I've tried to ring everyone. It's like, you ain't fucking tried to ring everyone.
Absolutely.
Have you learned how to apply that resourcefulness in other areas?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I call it my obsession. I can turn it on, and I can just turn it on to for good these days.
Yeah,
and to add benefit.
The
to my
gift
life.
of addiction.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool.
And so you started using, once you kind of got out of school, that's when things went a bit
That's
awry?
when it started to get a lot worse.
Right.
So about 15 was when I first did IV, drug use. And then straight after school was like where there was no real structure anymore. So it was like, okay, I'm just going to be a really good addict.
I'm just going to get high all day.
I'm going to devote myself to this. Like my friends some went to apprenticeships, others uni, stuff like that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do this. Like, and I'm going to
do it well.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
okay.
Take some pride in it kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was like because by this stage, you're 50. How old when you left school?
17. I finished.
17.
I don't know how, but I finished.
There was still another 5, 24, what's that, 3 and 4? That's still another 7 years before you got yourself clean.
Yep.
So was that a 7 years of just hardcore heroin and drug use?
Yes.
And I'm not talking are we talking the rave party scene that was going on at that time? Or
not
are we
really.
talking the dungeon dark?
Yeah, not the glamorous type.
Yeah.
Like it more, also like it can go up and down in over a 24-hour period. It can go from like being in the casino for 3 days straight to then being in a boarding house, to then waking up in Ala, to then,
Yeah, right.
like,
yeah, right.
like, and then I've got money again. Oh, let's go to the coast for the weekend. And, it's like highs and lows.
Yeah.
Easy come, easy go lifestyle.
Very much so. I can understand that. So what was the lowest point during this period? Were there any points where you were like, fuck this, I need a way out? Or were you just too swept up in the lifestyle?
I mean, mate, there's lots of lows.
But were there any concrete lows where you hit with a thud and you were like... Because, I find with people, they normally have they bottom out a few times before they hit rock bottom. But sometimes, as a drug user, a lot of people don't realise it's a terminal illness oftentimes, especially when you're playing with heroin.
Absolutely.
So sometimes when you bottom out, sometimes your rock bottom can be the very end.
Correct.
So I'm curious, were there any like little kind of warning signs along the way? Because I know you overdosed a number of times. How many times did you overdose? Multiple times?
Mate, probably less than 10, but more than 5.
More than 5. And so we're talking Narcan brought back?
Yep. Ambulance called, gone purple kind of thing. Go to hospital.
Stop breathing.
Yep.
Okay. And were there any that were like touch and go?
Well,
probably all of them.
Yeah.
Were there any of the times you nearly died where it was touch and go? Fuck, why don't we just think about that question, Kerwin?
So yeah, the overdoses aren't really that bad because again, you're in denial. You wake up and you're probably pissed off at the ambos for ruining your high.
It's funny when you watch those programs like Cops or something when there's an addict who's out, they hit him with a Narcan, they wake up like, I'm out, man, now I got to get going, get fucking hook up again.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so I remember that pretty clearly, but the overdoses aren't.
That's so interesting. So there's no gratitude for your life being saved at that moment. You're just pissed
no
that
way.
You lost
You're
your
angry.
high.
I was at least. Yeah.
Well, I've seen that on the TV show, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Other lows, like I remember one time I got a naltrexone implant sewn into my stomach. So it's like a slow release naloxone, which is what they have in Narcan.
Yep.
And it blocks the effects of the opiates.
Right.
So mum and dad tried to help me get this implant sewn in. And so I'd had the implant. I'd done this horrid detox. Took about, 7 or 8 days, just disgusting detox because I obviously didn't stop using. I just went straight into it. And then I was like, okay, I got to use, I got to score. Called my dealer around. He's this like middle-aged Vietnamese guy, couldn't speak English. And I'm sitting under my parents' house and I'm trying to just use small amounts of heroin to get stoned but not overdose. Right, because my tolerance is completely gone.
Narcan's killed the tolerance.
Correct. And so I'm just having a little shot after little shot after little shot and I can taste it in the back of my throat, but I'm not having any effect whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
So for a heroin addict's like the absolute worst like kind of situation you can be in. I've got gear, I'm using it, but I'm not getting stoned. There's no effect. And so I remember sitting there just kind of breaking down and like begging this guy going, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to live my life? Like, if I can't use, what do normal people do? Like, what do you do? And this is the guy selling it to me. He can't even speak English. I'm asking him for friggin' life advice.
And you'd be my life coach.
Yeah. And just being like, oh, you've really fucked yourself now. Like, you can't even use the one thing that you want.
Yeah, right.
So that was a bit of, I suppose because I was half straight, there was a bit of awareness there.
Yeah, right.
Another time that was pretty for me, pretty low was when I was 19, I went to prison and I landed in prison, in maximum security prison, and I'm sitting there and I've
in
gone,
Brisbane?
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there in my cell and I've realized, shit, it's actually the gear. Like
it's not me.
It's not me. It's not the person that told on me. It's not the cop's fault. It's not anyone else's fault. It's like, it's you, man, and it's the drugs.
Yeah.
And you're a junkie.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and swearing and meaning it, like movie, like, moonlight through the cell window, tears. It's like, so just meaning it to the best of my ability that I'm never, ever, ever going to use again.
Right.
And just like would have passed a lie detector test with all sincerity.
Yeah, right.
And like 2 days later, a mate turned up at my cell door, said, there's gear in the unit. Do you want some? I said, yep, straight away. Turned up with a syringe that had been through about 50 blokes. I don't know how many times.
Yeah, right.
And use it. Then again, that night just kind of going, fucking look at you. You've just probably given yourself diseases.
Yep.
You weren't hanging out, you weren't withdrawing, you're past that stage, you are fucking hopeless.
Yeah.
You know, like you are completely fucking hopeless.
So there's a lot of guilt, a lot of shame.
Lots of shame. Massive shame.
And at what point did you start moving out of the guilt and shame and start discovering that there was a bit of will inside you to actually get clean and stay clean? How long were you in jail for?
So I was on remand, and then I got bailed before my hearing, and then I ended up beating the charges. So I was only in there for 5 months.
Okay.
Thank God.
But that was a sobering 5 months, I'm going to assume. Or sobering in the sense, it sounds like you were using throughout your incarceration. But was it sobering in the perspective of, if I don't get my life together, this could end up being my fucking life?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And seeing the effect of people that were 5-10 years down the track that were in there, you know.
So you were getting the opportunity, you were seeing your life.
Well, I was young, I was 19, and a lot.
But were you consciously looking at some of these older junkies and these older men? And I mean, no disrespect by that. I'm trying to create context here.
Totally.
But did you ever look at some of these older guys and go, fuck, if I don't get my shit together, that's going to be me. That toothless guy in the corner who's half balding, you know, who's got an eye patch.
Yes and no. Like, part of me probably still had that arrogance and denial to go, I'm not going to be this guy.
I'm bulletproof.
Guys. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm better than this.
Exactly. I got this. Like,
at what point were you able to tell the difference between your voice and the addict's voice?
The first time I remember was probably the day that I decided to get clean.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And was that 24?
Yeah.
And what led to that moment? What led to that gestalt of right, now's the time. I've been an addict now for almost 10 years.
I'd been trying. I'd done multiple of the naltrexone implants. I'd been on methadone, Suboxone, Subutex, like all the government programs, done the psychotherapy, psychiatry, all the stuff. Yeah. You know, and at this point, I was in a detox, just like a medicated detox facility.
Had you ever traveled to the US to do something like Ibogaine or psychedelic therapy? No?
No.
Keep going.
And so I was in this detox, and they kicked me out. I was medicated detox, and they kicked me out because I don't even really remember why, my behavior, I believe. And I remember leaving and the nurse giving me this handful of pills. So there was like clonidine and Valiums and blah, blah, blah. And I put them in took the plastic packet off my Winnie Reds, you know, and stuck it in the plastic packet. And she's like, you need to take these or you're going to have seizures, coming off all the pills that you were taking in addition to the methadone and the heroin. And I was still on methadone at that stage, but they're like, you're going to have seizures, which might kill you if you don't take these pills. And I remember standing in the car park to leave the detox or rehab treatment center, whatever, and looking at the pills in my hand, and something inside me just said, if you take these, it's going to be the end. You know, like, I don't know how, it might not be today, it might not be this moment, but if you take these, like, we're going straight back there, and like straight back to using, to the life, right. And the end is near. Like, I could feel it.
You felt it.
I could feel it, you know? And something inside of me, like you talk about that voice, something inside of me just said, just don't do it. And, you know, I didn't know it was recovery at that time, but like, you just got to do the opposite. You just got to do the opposite of what this head tells you right now, you know?
Had you lost any friends to overdoses at this point?
Yeah. I remember I had a mate overdosed while in rehab, and so this is just gives some, you know, perspective on the disease, I guess, or addiction, and open casket funeral in West End on the river, and he's lying there, and I look in and I swear to him that I'm never going to use again. Sign the coffin, you know, swear again, black and blue lie detector test.
How many hours?
2.
Yeah, right.
You know, straight on.
Yeah.
Like, left the funeral straight on. And that's where, like, when things like that start to happen, you're starting to get evidence that I can't do this. I'm never going to get clean.
And you must have seen the impact it's having on your family around you. You're seeing the pain. You're seeing the suffering.
You are, but you're in denial.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Do you ever have that? Have you ever had that kind of conversation with another addict or reflected on yourself? Because, you know, I was talking to this girl at a party on Saturday night, who used to suffer from an eating disorder, but she now has this massive charge towards addicts. And it was an interesting contrast because she didn't see the connection at all. And she was just going, well, if someone's addicted, all they've got to do is they've just got to stop using. And it's like, it's like, fuck.
I love that one.
Fuck. Why didn't we think of that? Yeah. And how do you explain to someone as an addict? Because when you're an addict, there is no rationale. There is no logic. You can see, like you said, you just went to an open casket funeral of your mate who fucking died, who overdosed on the very drug that you're addicted to.
Correct.
Signed his coffin, made a commitment to yourself. 2 hours later, you're banging the hammer up your arm again.
Yeah.
When someone says, that makes no fucking sense, how do you explain that to somebody?
Mate, honestly, I believe it's not. You can't really get it, like truly get it, until you've been there, But it's just like this obsession that when I make the decision to use, it just cannot be stopped.
Yeah.
Like it's like something goes in my head. Yes, we're going to do this thing, whatever the thing is, and no matter what, that's just going to happen. I don't care what it takes.
Yeah.
And it just does. It's just like this mental obsession, and there's no other option. Yeah. I guess.
It's interesting when you look at the chemistry of addiction. The most addicting part of addiction is the pre-use.
Right.
It's the dopamine. It's a dopamine surge when the addict is on the hunt, when they're about to use, which is actually the most addictive component.
Which is where it actually began to get for me towards the end. Yeah, right. Where that was better than the actual use.
Yeah, because then you'd use and you're like,
and you're disappointed because you're never quite there where you want to be, right? And so, like, you either don't have enough or you took too much and fell asleep and wasted it. Yeah. So it's like...
Okay, so you're 24 years of age. You've just been kicked out of rehab. You got a handful of pills you're told you need to take or you're going to die. You start questioning everything. What happens next? Did you go back and knock on the rehab door and say, fuck, I'm sorry, take me back, I don't want to die?
No, I didn't. I started to... Well, obviously I'd seen my old man in recovery.
Yeah, okay.
And so I knew there was another option. I knew there were other ways.
Okay. So your dad was an active... he was active in
12-step fellowship.
Yeah, right. Yep. Are we talking, once a week, every day kind of meeting guy? Or?
Couple times a week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Couple times a week.
And so you had been brought up with seeing him in recovery?
That, yep.
And at what point in your life did you look at what he was doing and go, so Dad, why do you do that? Did you ever have that kind of...
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And did he explain it to you?
I remember the first time asking, Dad, why don't you drink? And he said, mate, if I drink, we won't have this house anymore and we won't have a family.
Right.
And I remember
didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you're going through all of this, what was your relationship like with your dad? Did you...
Strained, difficult, because he understood it. Like now I've got some perspective and I can see how powerless he must have been and how difficult it must have been for him, but it was strained, but he was always 100% there for me. Did he ever blame him? Did you ever get the feeling like he blamed himself a little bit? No, I can't say I did. That's cool. Yeah, I can't say I did. Good for your dad. Yeah. Good for your dad. Yeah. Because you're a new dad, right? I am. 5 days ago, you just had a baby boy. I did. What's his name? Axwell. Axwell. What a cracking name. Yeah. Because you obviously, I don't know if you've actually had this, and if I'm the first person to take you through this, I hope this isn't traumatic for you. But have you ever sat there and thought about with Axwell, the fast forward to... Of course. Wow, in 5 days you've already done that. Oh, before he was here. Come on, man. Come on, dude. Of course. And so when you think about that, like how do you think you're going to do life different as a parent when you knowing what you know, or just being what you've been through, when you consider that these developmental years, and this is what's really interesting about addiction, they're actually, because they've called addiction in some cases a genetic or an environmental disease. Sure. And what we're now discovering is that the genetics play a very, 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 very small factor. Which is great, right? Which is enormously beneficial. Enormously beneficial for the next generation. They're saying environments, it's the brain development. Like this is where all the research points to. It's the brain development and how that brain develops, and does that child feel safe? Are they demonstrated how to regulate pain, stress, and emotion in healthy ways? Do they have a stable figure? Do they have that connection to something that makes them feel safe when their world is chaotic? Like as an addict yourself, do you now think I'm actually going to be? Are you scared of being a parent, or you think you're going to be a better parent as a result of what you've been through? I'd like to think I'm going to be a better parent for sure. Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think you're going to do that? Like, what do you think you're going to do differently to other parents? So for me, I've just had this kind of switch recently where I've tried to get away from this idea of being a good parent.
Yeah, right.
Right? And instead of being a good parent, why don't I just focus on being a really good me, like a really good person?
I
because
fucking love that, mate. Well done.
he's gonna see who I am rather than what I preach or speak or try and pretend or
Yep.
you know, I don't want to put a mask on to be the parent.
Yep.
You know, so that's
authentic, mate.
that's the plan.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's kind of cool because I get to continue working on myself, not put that aside and work on being a parent. It's like, if I just make me the best I can be, that's probably going to be the best for him.
Are you excited about being a parent?
Yeah.
All he says is he's shitting his pants.
Exactly. I mean, yes, I'm very excited, but I'm also, shitting my pants a bit.
I get it. I totally get it. What are you scared most about as being a parent?
Good question. Probably being able to show emotional intimacy that I haven't been able to before.
That's deep, bro.
Yeah.
That's deep. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really exciting. I'm conscious of the fact I've left a gaping hole in the narrative
Cool.
here.
Let's go back.
You 24, pills in the hand.
Yep.
You're gonna make the decision. What happened?
Went back to Brisbane and started hanging around people that I knew were well.
So did you do geographical? Like, did you pick yourself up and move yourself to somewhere? You didn't?
No.
Wow, you stayed in the same area?
Yeah.
Wow.
Stayed in the same area.
Tough.
Well, at this stage, I was still on methadone. I was still on 120 milligrams of methadone.
Right.
And so I started attending recovery meetings and going there and reducing. Like, I had to gradually come off. So it took me about 6 months. And
methadone's harder to get off than heroin.
Yeah. That's a horrible drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you started like tapering on your own steam?
No, with my doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whilst doing NA meetings?
Yeah, while doing...
NAAA?
Yeah.
And so what do you think was the thing that... Because you tried so many things. What do you think was the thing or the variables or the couple of things that actually made the difference this time around?
Like they say in recovery, you know, groups, I guess, that only had to change one thing and that's everything. You know, so so that was like, you know, old people, old places, old playmates, old playthings, everything.
All your triggers
has to change.
Yeah.
And so it was like, again, I guess it was kind of like the opposite of what my head wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had to do the next thing, you know, and that was where exercise became really kind of a bit of an obsession.
Right.
You know, it just kind of...
Because by this stage, you're morbidly obese.
I was big boy, like full man boobs and yeah.
And you've now at this point gone and got yourself a job in the gym as the janitor?
Well, it's funny, my cousin owned a chain of gyms and...
Which ones?
Pure Health Clubs.
Okay.
Yeah. And her and her partner owned them at the time and Mum was just trying to get me to do something positive and said, they need help ripping up the carpets. And I could think of nothing worse, being a fat addict, you know, just smoking cigarettes all day. And I went along and did that. And then, I don't know, I got speaking to a partner and I think he said, you know, do you want to come and do some stuff here? Like, you can vacuum the studios or come and see the manager, and worked with her and she got me vacuuming the studios and going and emptying the lead boxes at Subway, whatever, just basically filling in time. I swear they were doing a favor to Mum at the time, you know. And yeah, that's where that kind of started. So I started putting a lot of energy there, spending a lot of time there, just turned that obsession I was talking about earlier into that, you know, up all night just reading books, learning about nutrition.
But there had to have been a switch from, you know, emptying fucking lead boxes and pulling up carpet and vacuuming the gym to all of a sudden going, okay, I'm now interested in nutrition. I'm now interested in exercise.
It was something I'd always wanted.
Right.
You know, it was something I'd always wanted growing up, like, because I was the addict and overweight, and, you know, seeing my friends pick up women or seeing my friends be able to take their shirt off at the pool or whatever, and me not have the confidence to do that.
Wow.
And just feeling so self-conscious and still so less than.
Yeah, right.
And really wanting it and yearning for it and, you know, feeling like I can't do it. You know, I'd have these small, like, I remember in addiction, I'd have these small kind of bursts of inspiration where I'd go buy a weight set and a Men's Health mag, you know, and like the best pre-workout I could find,
and a fucking protein bar. Yeah,
exactly. and take the pre-workout and do like 3 sets and then like fall in a heap, literally sick for 3 days because my body hadn't done anything, and you know, like just not conditioned at all.
So it's a pretty radical transformation at this point. Like you've got the job in the gym, you start, you know, working around the gym, and then instinctively, addictively, obsessively, you just start picking it up.
Started training, twice a day. Couldn't sleep because on methadone you can't sleep, and so of an evening I'd go for runs or walks, and weight started coming off. I started feeling better. People started noticing, positive feedback loop. You know, this is kind of cool.
Yep. You kept the meetings up as well?
Yep.
Still to this day?
A lot less, but I'm still connected.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
The community's everything.
Yep, correct.
And so how old are you now?
34.
34. So it's 10 years in January. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at what point did you? Because you then went on to compete.
I competed in 2015. Yeah.
Yeah. Won Mr. Queensland heavyweight. Natural. Congratulations. That's not an easy task to do.
Thank you.
And I'm going to assume by this point you've been training for it's got to be what 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah. And
obsessively.
Obsessively, yeah. But this is the thing, you know, and again, a lot of people go, you know, because we do some videos on social media on addiction, and you know, there are still some addicts out there that see it's just all bad. Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough the power of addiction, the resourcefulness in addiction, but also the gift of addiction. It's not just in our obsessive and compulsive nature when directed in the right way that can produce incredible things. It's also the fact that we're wounded. And when we're wounded and we remove the substance that numbs us from the pain of our wounds, those issues come to the surface. Absolutely. And is that something that happened for you?
Definitely.
What did you find came to the surface that you really had to work on that was sitting there the whole time that the drug addiction was masking?
So probably the biggest one, I mean, the work we do today and the work I believe in today is we kind of believe that there are 3 core fears that drive our behavior. Right. The biggest one for me was that I have this fear of worthlessness. So that'd be my primary. Yeah. You know, so as I am not good enough, like I said before, flawed and defective, I'm somehow not enough. So I have this head that constantly tells me I need to be more, do more, have more, achieve more in order to one day be happy, which never comes.
Yeah, right.
So that was like my core kind of stuff. Then there's also that fear of powerlessness. I just hate feeling out of control. You know, I hate it when things don't go my way. I hate it when basically anything's outside of my control.
Is that in conflict with step 1? Like admitting powerlessness?
I could admit powerlessness and surrender to that, but I hate it. I don't like feeling powerless. Okay, fair enough. In my life and in my recovery, like day-to-day life, like it's something I try to avoid at all costs. I've set up my entire life so I don't, not consciously, but now with some awareness, I now notice like, oh, you work for yourself, you do everything on your own, you know, not on my own, but I'm basically in control of everything in my life at all times.
How important are routines for you?
Massive.
Okay. Because this is one of the things I learned through addiction was the power of routines and the importance of having routines, because as an addict, you often forget how to live a life. Yeah. You forget how to be a normal person.
You don't even know what it is. Yeah. Like I didn't know what type of foods I liked. Yeah. I didn't know how to dress. I remember asking someone how to teach me how you dress, mate. Someone that I looked up to. And a lot of people don't understand that it's actually not just a healthy concept for addicts. It's a healthy human concept. Yeah, right. The more routines, the more structure, the more discipline we have, the easier it is for us to actually be healthy by virtue of automatic behavior. Yeah. Because the challenge for an addict is when we're bored, when we don't know what to do, our first thing is let's get high. Sure. You know, and so for me, I found, as you've just explained as well, routines have been very important. What have been some of the best routines that you've worked on for yourself and for your clients that have helped you become a healthier human being? So for me, definitely daily routine around like a morning practice. Yep. Like I'm off all the really fluffy 2-hour long morning practices that are kind of popular at the moment, but some sort of mindfulness / meditation, some sort of gratitude practice, and some sort of planning for your day, like some sort of actual awareness as to what do I actually want to achieve today, and then executing that stuff. Exercise has been invaluable for me. Like before getting clean, I was really angry. Like I was a very angry person, and it was almost like magic when I started exercising and having that outlet. I believe exercise played a big role. Not shooting up heroin on ice every day helped, but it was a panacea. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
only helped the symptoms.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
exercise enabled you to get
Exercise helped
that
me.
anger to the surface.
Yeah, and
Did you know what you were angry at?
Honestly, I was just really angry at myself, and
Yeah.
I felt so less than because of the stories that I had in my head.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was angry at everyone outwardly as a result of that. You know, and because the stories I had in my life, like, and in that scene, in that subculture, like, you're angry at lots of people for lots of reasons.
There's always a reason to be angry.
Correct. Yeah.
So you then found...
And it's a good front.
Yeah, it's a great front. And there's always a good reason to use, you know, when you're angry. So in 2009, you founded Awakened Lifestyles. Is that right?
We founded a different company. We've rebranded to Awaken Lifestyles in the last 12 months.
So tell us what it is that you do now.
So we help awaken people to a life of purpose and deep fulfillment. So we do what we call inner work.
Right.
So we work from the inside out, transformation from the inside out, teaching people how to live in line with their values, teaching people how to actually like themselves, if not love themselves.
And when you work with someone in the beginning on a process, because I love the fact it's inner work, and because whenever I'm talking to people and they say, "Oh, I've got to go and do that," I say, "Mate, it all starts in here."
Correct.
You know, I can give you every strategy. You've been in this. I say I can give you every fucking strategy in the book, but if we don't fix what's inside, you're going to find a way to fuck it up every way to Friday.
Exactly.
So when you're working with people to help them, do the inner work and do the work from the inside out, so they can become, more whole, happy human beings. So where's a good place to start?
For me, the biggest part is, and one of the biggest realizations I had would be recognizing that I'm not my mind. So that's huge. Until I can really grasp that concept, I'm kind of fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not this mind that continually shames, blames, judges, criticizes, or compares me to other people. It's not who I am. Because I had this head that constantly said, "You're fat." And I go, "Yeah, you're fat. You're worthless. Yeah, you're worthless. You should go punch that guy over there. Yeah, great idea. Let's go do that."
Yeah.
And just constantly listening to this head, which was trying to either move toward a pleasant feeling or away from an unpleasant feeling. And that was it, with no actual concept of anything deeper or meaningful. So when I realized I'm not my mind, I'm not my head, that was huge. Like that Eckhart Tolle, whoa, there's more to this.
Yeah, right.
And then second step would then be recognizing I am not my body either. I have a body, but I'm not my body. I'm blessed to be at the top of the food chain and have this, bag of meat, which can have emotions and, be an amazing vessel to experience life through. However, it's not who I am. So what I'm interested in and what we try to teach is, who am I? How do I experience myself beyond body and mind?
Yeah, right.
What is that? And I believe when we get in touch with that place, real magic happens. Purpose just arises. And people begin living in line with that purpose, and they actually get what they wanted, which is to be happy and content.
Is there a step 3? So you are not your mind, you are not your body.
So, and then it's I am the awareness that notices that I have both.
Yeah, right.
So
the higher self.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't, it's difficult to put into words, right?
Yep.
I don't want to have a name for it. You call it whatever you like.
Yep.
But
I call him Johnny.
Teacup.
Yeah,
whatever you want.
Yeah, I get it.
Whatever,
the
right?
cup of the ocean. Yeah, right.
Whatever. Don't care. But I am the awareness that notices that I have both.
Yeah. Okay.
So then we kind of teach, okay, so if I have this head that's constantly just trying to move toward feelings, essentially, it's time to parent him or her. Like a little 5-year-old kid that's drawing on the walls of my life.
So you teach people how to self-parent.
Correct.
Yeah.
We call it parenting the mind.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah. And I begin parenting this 5-year-old kid, and it's not okay for you to compare me to other people. It's not okay for you to constantly criticize me about my body size or shape or how I'm working or a relationship or what my boyfriend is or isn't doing when I'm at work, whatever,
Yeah, right.
Just parenting that mind with respectful structure.
Yeah.
And I believe, that's pretty common, and that's where not most, but a lot of, I guess, PD kind of stuff ends.
Yeah.
The next step for us would be actually connecting with this body.
Yeah.
Who's another little kid in here. And for the last couple of decades, if it was anything like me, he was abused pretty badly, and he was avoided. Any time I had a feeling, it was like shoved down deep, get down, or avoid it, or suppress it, or deny it, or let's try and outrun it. Right. And so it's about making peace and making friends with this body. Where I have, because the only place where I'm going to have my feelings, right? The only place where I'm actually going to have what I want, which is, to be happy and content. And I say that again and again because out of the hundreds and thousands, well, if not thousands of clients that I've sit down and speak to, everyone's got these different goals.
Yeah.
You know, like your business owners would have different goals. And when I get to why and what's that going to do for you and how's that going to make you feel and what are you going to experience more of and blah, 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 blah. And we get down to it, every single client says about the same thing, which is, I just want to be happy and content.
Yeah.
You know? And so I go, well, me, who's a shortcut kind of guy, like if there's a shortcut, I'll take it, you know? Yeah. And I go, where am I going to feel happy? Well, in my body, that's the only place. My mind, you know, my mind's never had a feeling in its life, you know? So shush, stay out of it, mate.
Yeah.
You're just getting in the way, really. And so if I can connect with this body and say, you know, I guess foster the conditions for happiness and contentment, life's pretty good.
Did you find in the early stages of your training, as you were still coming out of your addiction and you were still transitioning into a healthier life,
yep,
that there was the possibility that you traded one form of self-abuse for another?
100%.
So,
absolutely.
Right. So
absolutely. So I remember the bodybuilding was probably an example of that.
Yep.
I remember winning the comp
Yep.
and being on stage and holding the trophy, hand up in the air, and being kind of elated, like it's serious discipline.
Yep.
And being like, yeah, you did it, you're the man kind of thing.
And then you get off stage.
Well, I didn't even get that far.
Wow.
It was about 2 seconds later and I just went, yeah, but this isn't right for me. And then there was a guy that won one of the other divisions and he said to me, oh, he was so, like he was bouncing off the walls and he's like, oh man, we're going to go to nationals and I'm going to go, and my plan was to do that, you know, go to nationals and go to the next comp the next week and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I can't wait to just diet harder this week and get my glutes in a bit tighter. And something inside of me just went, no, that's not what this is about for me. That's self-harm.
Yeah, right.
You know? And I actually, at about 4 or 5 weeks out from the show, I knew, like I actually had parenting my body and supporting my body, I actually had a conversation where I was like, mate, we know this isn't good for you.
Yep.
Like, we know this isn't optimal health. And actually being healthy and happy and vibrant is more important to me than how many striations I have on my friggin' abs, you know, on my quads. Like, and at that point, I remember making a conscious decision to just go, we're just going to go get through to the show and then we're going to decide. And the decision was made for me as soon as I won the trophy, you know, like.
And so you went from punishing the body you hate to now creating the body you love.
Correct. And supporting it with kindness and
parenting.
Yeah, parenting.
Good parenting.
Yeah.
And in the process, you got 10 years of parenting under your belt before, 10 years? How old are you now? 34. So you had a good, how old were you? 2015. So you had a good 5 years or so of good parenting yourself before you had...
You got a bit of a warm-up.
Yeah, well, you need it. Trust me, pal. Yeah. He's going to keep you busy. So where to from here? You've got Awaken Lifestyles. Yeah. Who are the type of people that you typically work with?
Typically work with high-functioning humans who are wanting more.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them have ticked all the boxes. We've got a lot of professionals. I mean, we work with, you know, all types of people, but we kind of get the people who have tried lots of stuff.
Yeah. And still searching.
Still searching. You know, they've got the degree or the profession and the car and the house, and they still feel a bit empty.
Yeah.
You know, and they're looking for something that they can't get on the outsides.
How much of a role does meditation play in your life right now?
Huge.
What style do you do? What's your jam?
It's probably the one I've dedicated most time to would be this Theravada noting practice.
Okay. Where
I learned from a guy called Kenneth Folk. He's in the States who spent probably 30 years of his life on retreat in like Burma, and he teaches this Theravada noting. He's kind of like hacked it a bit.
Is it like a mantra-based pitching?
No, it's kind of like a practice where I'll sit here and just objectively note and observe everything that comes up. So I might sit here and so, for example, say like seeing, hearing, warmth. It is hot in here. Tightness in my chest, dryness on my lips, expansiveness, peacefulness. And I just note what comes up in the moment, and takes me to some pretty incredible places. So that, as well as, I guess you could call that a bit of insight, I guess. And then I do a bit of concentration, and that varies between, you know, noticing the breath or staring at the teacup or the candle or the whatever it might be.
But it's a big part of your life.
Massive, yeah, every day.
And so where to from here? Like, where's your main focus now? Is it on Awaken Lifestyles, on Axwell?
Both.
On both?
Yeah, on both. Yeah, so Definitely on the business. So definitely, like it's my purpose. I can't not do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just drawn to it. I'm just called to it. I just have to.
It's what you're here to do.
There's no other option. And so focusing on that.
Is there a book in the pipeline?
There is.
Yeah. What's it called? Was it too early to say?
Oh, I've Good Enough project has come up, but I'm not certain on it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no title yet, but it's started being written.
Okay, well done.
So yeah, that's happening.
How many lines have you got in so far?
In about 12 months, maybe 30 or 40 Word doc pages.
Yeah, right. He's got 30 or 40 pages on me, Timmy, so he's doing pretty well. Fantastic, mate. Look, this has been an incredible conversation. If we could finish on the best piece of advice you've ever received or the best piece of advice that you ever give, what would it be?
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Be kind. Yeah. I love
And you are not your mind.
You are not your mind, you're not your body, but you can parent both.
Correct.
Anthony, this has been incredible. If people want to find out more about you and what you do, awakenlifestyles.com.au.
Correct.
Instagram.
At Anthony Inner Work.
At Anthony Inner Work.
And then Awaken Lifestyles on Facebook.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. Anthony Noud.
Correct.
There we go.
Got it. Yes,
Noud.
you got it, man.
Noud. Thank you so much for being here on Unstoppable, mate. I really love the journey and thank you for being so honest.
Thank you for having me.
And namaste.
Namaste.
There you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Unstoppable with me, your host, Kerwin Ray. And do me a favor, don't forget to drop me a review on iTunes. Would love to hear what you think. I love reading what you guys have to say. And your reviews make sure we keep creating killer content just like this. If you want to stay up to date with me and all my movements, please jump onto the website, kerwinray.com. And also check us out on social media at Kerwin Ray.